Before you start, hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single corporate revenge story like this one. What happens when the ultimate betrayal occurs before the eyes of the entire world? He was Dominic Stone, a real estate magnate from Manhattan, notorious for his boundless ambition. She was his silent, beautiful wife, Eliza. But at the Apex Foundation Charity Gala, Charleston's most important social event, Dominic didn't just ignore his wife. He dared to publicly and passionately kiss his new mistress, Sierra Vance, in front of every single photographer. The humiliation was total. The world saw Eliza's life shatter, but everyone forgot one crucial detail, a secret Eliza had kept for 12 years. Dominic may have run the company, but Eliza owned it, and the hammer was about to fall. The Gilded Cage. The grand ballroom of the Wentworth Mansion in Charleston was stifling. It wasn't the heat. The air conditioning maintained an Arctic chill that carried the scent of 1,000 jasmine blossoms. It was the weight of the diamond necklace, a generous anniversary gift from Dominic, which felt more like a beautiful, glittering leash. The weight of the bespoke midnight blue silk gown, a color Dominic had deemed subtle and appropriate. And, most of all, the weight of being Mrs. Eliza Stone. To the world, Eliza Stone was the luckiest woman in America. 12 years ago, she was a quiet, bookish young woman, a nobody. Then she captured the attention of Dominic Stone, the most ambitious, charismatic, and ruthless property developer in the Southeast. He had built Stone Capital from nothing, a story he told often, turning it into a $10 billion empire. Eliza, with her understated elegance and slender figure, was the perfect accessory. She chaired the right charities, spoke only when spoken to, and looked exquisite on his arm. Tonight was the Apex Foundation's annual gala. In theory, it was Eliza's event, the chairwoman's. But when Dominic strode onto the stage, the lights followed him like a magnet. "We all have a duty," Dominic thundered, his voice like polished steel filling the room. He flashed his famous predatory smile. "A duty to build, a duty to succeed, and when you succeed, a duty to give back." The room, filled with Charleston's Southern nobility and Atlanta's new tech elite, erupted in applause. Eliza clapped softly, her smile as rehearsed and perfect as the pearls on the woman next to her. She watched her husband. He was a magnificent creature, all sharp angles, costly tailoring, and blinding confidence. He looked in every way the king of the city. But kings become careless. Eliza felt the shift 6 months ago. It wasn't a sudden storm, but a change in the air, a drop in barometric pressure. It was the way Dominic suddenly began guarding his phone, tilting the screen away from her, though she had never shown the slightest interest. It was the new, unmistakable scent on his cashmere sweaters. Not his cologne, but something musky, expensive, and invasive. It was the whispers. "He's a titan," a voice drifted from a nearby table. "But that new VP of his, Sierra Vance, she's the one with the killer instinct. They say she's the reason the Suncoast deal closed. They say a lot of things about her," the columnist purred, his eyes finding Dominic on stage. "She's brilliant and devastating." Eliza's hand, resting on the white linen tablecloth, tightened. Sierra Vance. The name had been a constant in their home for months. Sierra closed the deal. Sierra reorganized the division. Sierra works as hard as I do. Eliza had done her own quiet research. Sierra was indeed devastating. A tall, fiery redhead, a Wharton graduate with a social media presence as sharp and curated as her cheekbones. Her feed was a mix of brutalist architecture, high fashion, and enough candid boardroom shots at Stone Capital to signal her importance. Dominic finished his speech, and the applause was deafening. He strode off stage, but instead of returning to Eliza's table, he was intercepted by a mob of adoring fans. Eliza watched him laugh, that great theatrical laugh, and slap a rival developer on the back. Her cell phone vibrated silently in her clutch bag. A single-line text message from a number saved as AG. Account settled. Event Horizon provision confirmed and secured. Eliza read the message once. A barely perceptible breath escaped her. She texted back a single word. Admitted. She looked up. Across the ballroom, Dominic had finally worked his way to Sierra Vance. Sierra, in a daring, crimson dress that left nothing to the imagination, looked at him not as an employee, but as a predator assessing her prey. She laughed, touching his forearm. It was a casual gesture of intimacy that screamed ownership. Eliza picked up her water glass, the cool crystal against her skin. The weight of her dress, the diamonds, the last name. It was all still there. But it was no longer a cage. It was armor. She was the quiet wife, the subtle accessory, the woman who would never, ever be a threat. And as she watched her husband and his mistress in the center of the room, Eliza Stone realized with chilling calm that everyone had made a terrible, terrible mistake. They believed she was just the wife of the man who ran the company. They had no idea she was the woman who owned it. Preparation for revenge. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in subtle psychological warfare. The event Dominic and Sierra were organizing was not a hidden affair. It was Stone Capital's 12th anniversary Grand Innovation Gala. It was, by all accounts, Dominic's masterpiece. He was planning to unveil his legacy project, a multi-billion-dollar smart city complex that would redefine the Charleston skyline. His name was on the invitations. His face was on the cover of Forbes that month, anticipating the announcement. Eliza's preparations were quieter. "Mr. Graham," she said, her voice soft in the soundproof study of her own townhome in the French Quarter, a property Dominic didn't even know she owned. This was not the shared penthouse, but her sanctuary, her real office. Arthur Graham, AG, was a man who looked carved from granite. He had been her father's chief counsel, and now he was hers. He was the only person alive who knew the entire truth. "Eliza," he replied, his voice a gravelly monotone. He never called her Mrs. Stone. "The Ether Holdings board is concerned." "Ether Holdings is me, Arthur," Eliza said, turning from the window. "And I am concerned. But not about the stock price. I am concerned about the rot." "The rot?" "Mr. Stone is about to announce the legacy project," Arthur said, adjusting his spectacles. "A project funded entirely by Ether through 3 shell corporations and presented as his own. If he sinks, we take the hit." "He is going to sink," Eliza said. "He's arrogant, he's careless, and he's in love, or whatever he calls it, with a woman who is as arrogant and careless as he has become. He thinks he is the sun, and he's about to fly right into it." "So what do we do?" Arthur asked. "We do nothing," Eliza said. We let him fly. We let him reach the highest point, and when he's at the apex, I will hand him the bill for the wax." She turned back to the window. "I need you ready, Arthur. Event Horizon Protocol. I want it loaded. I want the termination for cause documents drafted. I want the asset seizure orders filed and sealed, ready to execute on my command." "That is scorched earth, Eliza," Arthur said, the closest he ever got to surprise. "That is what is left after a forest fire, Arthur," she countered. "And I am standing in the ashes." Pause for thought. If you were Eliza, would you have exposed Dominic immediately, or waited for the perfect moment like this? Comment your answer. In the penthouse, the glass and chrome box Dominic called home, the tension was palpable. The Innovation Gala is everything, Eliza, Dominic said, pacing in front of his walk-in closet, which was the size of a studio apartment. He was already in his tuxedo shirt. This isn't one of your charity things. This is legacy. I am aware, Dominic. You've mentioned it. Eliza was at her vanity, applying a neutral and unassuming lipstick. I need you immaculate tonight, he said, not looking at her. Simple, elegant. The Atlanta board is flying in. The mayor will be there. I don't want distractions. Distractions? She repeated. Her voice flat. Yes, just be the perfect hostess. Smile, shake hands, and leave the important conversations to me. He finally turned, his eyes sweeping over her. And where's the blue? The one I like. The blue? She said. Yes, not that garish red thing you bought last week. Eliza's gaze was immutable. I didn't buy a red dress, Dominic. He frowned, annoyed. Whatever. Just be ready. The car is here in 20. He walked out of the room, already on the phone. Sierra, make sure the press kits have the new design. Eliza stared at her reflection. She hadn't bought a red dress, but she knew with the certainty of the sunrise who had. She picked up her phone and sent a new text to Arthur Graham. Add Sierra Vance to termination protocol. Cause, conspiracy to defraud principal shareholder. Admitted. Eliza stood up. She looked at the midnight blue dress Dominic had laid out for her. Then she walked to the back of her closet, to a garment bag she had retrieved that afternoon. Dominic wanted simple. He wanted subtle. He wanted his wife to be a shadow. She unzipped the bag. Inside was a dress the color of ice, a dazzling, shimmering, bespoke Oscar de la Renta that didn't just enter a room. It conquered it. He wants a distraction, she whispered to her reflection. He is about to get one. The kiss. The Gibby's Museum of Art in Charleston was transformed. The Grand Hall, usually reserved for ancient relics, was now a monument to modern ego. Giant screens with stone capital projections swept the walls. The air thrummed with a string quartet playing a modern rendition of an Albanese concerto. When Dominic and Eliza Stone arrived, a blast of paparazzi exploded in a blinding wall of light. Dominic, as always, soaked it up. He put his arm around Eliza's waist, a possessive gesture. But the narrative shifted. The whispers from the press line were different tonight. It's Eliza. Mrs. Stone, look at that dress. Eliza, in her shimmering, glacial white gown, looked less like a shadow and more like a queen. The diamonds at her throat were not a leash. They were a warning. She smiled, a tiny, knowing Samoa smirk, and let Dominic lead her inside. But she was the one everyone watched. Dominic felt it. He gripped her waist harder, his smile tightening. It's a lot of dress, Eliza. Too much, don't you think? Is it? She murmured, slipping from his grasp to take a champagne flute from a passing waiter. I thought it appropriate for an anniversary. She glided into the crowd, a vision in white, leaving him standing in the entryway, scowling. The party was a sea of Dominic's success. The mayor was there, the Atlanta investors reserved and watchful. And then there was Sierra Vance. She had indeed worn red. It was a column of blood-colored silk, dazzlingly bold, that was practically painted on. Her fiery hair was pulled back, her lips painted the same shocking red. It was a declaration of war, and she stood by the model of Dominic's legacy project, acting as if she were the hostess. Eliza watched from a distance. She saw the glances, the whispers, the way Dominic and Sierra kept finding each other, their bodies aligned, their heads bent. They were a power couple who radiated innate energy, and Eliza was once again relegated to the role of wife. The moment for the main event arrived. Dominic strode onto the stage. Tonight, he began, his voice choked with emotion. We don't just celebrate 12 years of success. We celebrate the future, a future I built. Eliza, standing near the back, felt a chill course through her veins. A future I built. I couldn't have done it alone, Dominic continued. He thanked the mayor. He thanked the board. And then he smiled, his gaze fixed on the red dress in the front row. But the vision is nothing without a catalyst, without someone who shares that fire, someone who sees the world the way you do. Please join me in thanking the brilliant, the visionary, Sierra Vance. The spotlight swung to Sierra. She looked triumphant. She walked toward the stage. And then, the unthinkable happened. It was not a handshake. It was not an embrace. Dominic, high on his own ego and the roar of the crowd, leaned in. Sierra, eyes locked on his, met him on the steps. In front of 200 guests, the mayor of Charleston, the international press, and his wife, Dominic Stone, pulled Sierra Vance into his arms and kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It was a deep, passionate, cinematic-level kiss. The flashes didn't just pop. They exploded. The room went into utter silence. The only sound, the click, click, click of a dozen cameras capturing the moment. Eliza did not move. She did not gasp. She did not faint. She simply stood, her face a pale, beautiful mask, and watched. She saw the man she had once loved, the man she had created, publicly and brutally humiliate her. She saw Sierra's hand curl around Dominic's neck, a gesture of pure, triumphant ownership. A single reporter, braver than the rest, swung his camera from the stage to Eliza. The flash was blinding. It captured the image that would be on the cover of the Wall Street Journal the next day. The perfect wife, ice cold, watching her own life detonate. The kiss ended. Dominic, dazed, looked out at the silent crowd. Sierra, lipstick barely smudged, looked directly and intentionally at Eliza. It was a smirk of pure victory. Eliza held her gaze. Then, with a calmness more terrifying than any scream, Eliza Stone placed her champagne flute on a waiter's tray, turned, and walked out of the grand hall. She did not run. She walked. Every step was measured, her back straight. The perfect wife had left the building. The execution. Dominic did not come home. The digital clock on Eliza's bedside table read 4:17 a.m. The silence of the penthouse was absolute. The dress of ice was pooled on her dressing room floor, a shimmering snakeskin she had shed. Eliza was in a simple gray silk robe, sitting in the darkness, watching the city that never slept. Her city. Her cell phone, which had been incessantly vibrating for hours, with texts from concerned friends and calls from Dominic that she had silenced, lit up with a single message from Arthur Graham. "Are you all right?" It was the most personal thing he had ever asked her. He kissed her in front of everyone. The journal is already online. "The stone and the siren," Eliza typed. A moment later, Arthur replied, "The protocol, activate." Eliza's thumb hovered over the screen. This was the final button. There was no going back. She thought of the 12 years of work, of building Dominic, of believing in the man he could be. She thought of the look on Sierra's face, that smug reptilian victory. She thought of the kiss, the arrogance, the public execution. "Activate," she wrote. "Event horizon full. Seize assets, freeze accounts, terminate leases. I want him to wake up tomorrow morning with nothing but his arrogance." "It will be done," Arthur replied. "Ether board meets at 9:00 a.m. to ratify the vote. Security has been dispatched to Stone Capital HQ. They secure the servers at 6 a.m. And Arthur?" Eliza typed. "Yes. Make sure they change the locks on the executive washroom." Eliza switched off the phone. She felt nothing. No sadness, not even rage, just a deep, cold emptiness that was rapidly filling with resolve. The sun was rising over the Cooper River when the penthouse door finally opened. Dominic stumbled in, his tuxedo tie undone, his hair mussed. He reeked of Sierra's perfume. He saw Eliza sitting in the morning gloom, and he visibly flinched. The bravado of the night before was gone, replaced by pale, hungover fear. "Eliza," he started, his voice thick. "Look, about last night." "No," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. It happened so fast. The energy, the crowd, Sierra. "Her name," Eliza said, standing up, "is the last thing I ever want to hear you say." "Eliza, listen to me." He tried to grasp her arm, his old authoritarian tactic. She stepped back, and his hand fell in the air. "You have to understand this. This is passion. This is real. What you and I have, it's comfortable. It's a partnership. But this, a partnership?" she repeated, nodding super slowly. "Yes, that's what we were." A wave of relief washed over his face. He mistook her calm for weakness, for acceptance. "Exactly. And I will take care of you. I'm not a monster. You'll have the penthouse, the Marbella villa, a very, very generous allowance. You'll never have to work a day in your life." He was already dividing the assets, assuming they were his to divide. "You're giving me the penthouse?" she asked, tilting her head. "Of course, and the driver. Just don't fight this, Eliza. Don't make it ugly. My lawyers will draw up the papers. We can call it irreconcilable differences. It'll be clean." "My lawyer," Eliza said, walking toward her dressing room, "is Arthur Graham." Dominic laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. "Graham? Your father's dusty old probate attorney. Eliza, don't be naive. He's a fossil. He's no match for my team. He'll be eaten alive. Just take the deal." Eliza paused at the door. She looked back at the King of Charleston standing in his living room, his shirt stained with another woman's lipstick. "You're right, Dominic," she said softly. "He is no match for your lawyers. He's so far above them, they aren't even playing the same game." She closed the door. He heard the click of the lock. Dominic, annoyed but relieved, poured himself a whiskey. He thought the worst was over. He thought he had won. He called his head of security. "Yes, Marcus. I'm working from home today. Lock down the executive floor. I don't want anyone bothering me, except for Ms. Vance, of course. Let her up." There was a pause. Mr. Stone?" "What?" Dominic snapped. My keycard isn't working." "What do you mean it's not working? It's a gold-level pass." "No, sir, I mean, the building isn't working. There are men here in suits. They're not our guys. They're Ether holding security. They're changing the locks, sir." Dominic's blood ran cold. "Ether, the holding company, why are they—" "Put the man in charge on the phone right now." The contract. To understand the beauty of what was happening at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, you must understand the lie Dominic Stone had been living for 12 years. Eliza's father, Lord Sterling Blackwood, had not been a probate attorney. He had been a ghost, a quiet, discreet tech and real estate genius who founded Ether Holdings in the 1980s. He bought land, patents, and entire city blocks, then hid them behind layers of LLCs and trusts. He hated the spotlight. When he died, he left his only daughter, Eliza, not just a fortune, but an empire. Eliza, then 25, had a choice. She could have become the billionaire on the covers, but she was her father's daughter. She wanted a low profile, and she wanted a partner, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by her. She met Dominic Stone when he was a junior analyst with lots of charm and a failing startup. He had no idea who she was. He only saw a beautiful, quiet woman. She saw his pure ambition and hunger. She decided to run an experiment. She gave him a seed loan, Family money, she called it. She let him found Stone Capital. What he never knew was that the company was founded as a 100% majority-owned subsidiary of Ether Holdings. He was never the owner. He was never the founder. He was, and always had been, the chief executive officer, CEO, an employee. Every brilliant deal he closed was with Ether's money. Every building he acquired was Ether property leased back to Stone Capital at a friendly rate. His entire empire, his name on the building, his private jet, his legacy project. It was all built on a foundation owned by the woman he had just told to keep the penthouse and the prenup. Dominic had insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect his future wealth. Eliza's lawyers, led by Arthur Graham, Ether's chief counsel, were delighted to draft it. It was an ironclad document that stated, without ambiguity, that upon divorce, all assets acquired before and during the marriage would be divided based on verified original ownership. Dominic had signed it with a smirk, thinking he was protecting himself from a gold digger. He had just signed his own death warrant. The Event Horizon Protocol was a tiny clause buried deep in Dominic's 200-page employment contract, a contract he had been too arrogant to read. It stipulated that if the CEO, Dominic, committed any act of gross public misconduct or moral turpitude that threatened the reputation of the parent company, Ether, the board could terminate his contract for cause with immediate effect. Termination for cause meant he lost everything: salary, bonuses, severance, and, most importantly, his unvested stock options. The public, passionate kiss with an employee at a company-sponsored event, which was now on the front page of every Western newspaper. That, Arthur Graham would argue, was the very definition of gross public misconduct. The 9 a.m. board meeting was not a meeting. It was a formality. It consisted of Eliza, as the sole shareholder, signing a single document presented by Arthur Graham. I, Eliza Sterling Stone, chairwoman, and sole owner of Ether Holdings, hereby ratify the termination of Dominic Stone, CEO of subsidiary Stone Capital, for cause, effective immediately. The empire fell with the scratch of a pen. The confrontation. Julian was in full-blown panic. His phone was a brick. His email had bounced back with a user unknown error. The private elevator to his office, access denied. He had, in fact, taken a cab, to the Stone Capital Tower, the glass and steel monument to his own ego. He stormed the lobby, face crimson. "I am Dominic Stone. You will let me up to my office," he roared at the new security guards in the lobby. They were big, quiet men, with the Ether Holdings emblem on their lapels. "Mr. Stone, sir, your name is not on the access list," the lead guard said, his voice polite, but final. "I am the access list," Dominic shouted. "No, sir, you are not." Just then, the elevator doors chimed. Sierra Vance arrived, looking flustered, but triumphant. She wore a sharp white pantsuit, ready for her first day as the unofficial new Mrs. Stone. "Dominic, darling, what is going on? My driver's corporate card was rejected," she said, annoyance in her voice. Then she saw the guards. "What is this? These goons won't let me up to my own office," Dominic said, grabbing her arm. "Don't be ridiculous," Sierra scoffed. She marched up to the lead guard. "I am Sierra Vance, Executive Vice President. These guards are fired. Call your supervisor now." The guard looked at a tablet in his hand. "Ah, yes, Ms. Vance. We have a package for you." He handed her a simple manila envelope. Sierra opened it, a smug look on her face. Her expression changed as she read. Her face went from smug to confused, then to ashen white. Inside was a single-page letter. It informed her that her employment at Stone Capital had been terminated, effective immediately, for company code of conduct violations and conspiracy to defraud. It further informed her that the company leased apartment she lived in would need to be vacated in 24 hours. Attached was an invoice for misappropriated corporate assets, including designer clothing, flights, and the red dress she had worn last night, all charged to the corporate Amex. This is a joke," she whispered, the paper trembling in her hand. "Dominic, what is this? What is Ether?" Dominic was saying, his voice ragged. "They're just our silent partners. They're a holding company. They can't do this." "Indeed," a voice said. "They can." Arthur Graham walked through the lobby doors, flanked by 2 more Ether guards. He looked like a very distinguished and very expensive undertaker. "Mr. Stone, Ms. Vance," Arthur said, his voice flat. "You are trespassing on private property." "Private property?" Dominic shrieked. "This is my building. I built it." "No, Mr. Stone," Arthur corrected him. "You were employed in this building, a building owned by Ether Holdings. As of 9:01 a.m. this morning, your employment and Ms. Vance's employment were terminated for cause." The word "for cause" hit Dominic like a physical blow. You can't! The board will never approve this. I am the board." "You were the chairman of the subsidiary board, Mr. Stone," Arthur said, glancing at his watch. "A board which was dissolved by its sole shareholder this morning. Security will now escort both of you off the premises. Any attempt to re-enter will be unfortunate." The guard stepped forward. "No." Sierra suddenly found her voice. It was ragged and ugly. "You can't. Dominic is the most powerful man in this city. He will sue you. He will sue Aether. We will own that company." Dominic for the first time looked utterly defeated. He knew deep down the power of Ether. He just never knew who they were. "Who?" he whispered, looking at Arthur. "Who? Who is Ether? Who did this?" Arthur Graham looked past Dominic to the main entrance. The glass doors swung open. "I did." Eliza Stone walked into the lobby. The transformation was absolute. Last night's dress of ice was gone, replaced by a razor-sharp black Tom Ford pantsuit. Her hair was pulled into a severe, powerful knot. Her face was pale, composed, and absolutely terrifying in its calmness. She was not Mrs. Stone. She was Eliza Sterling. She was flanked by her own security detail. Dominic's jaw went slack. The blood drained from his face. He looked from Eliza to Arthur Graham, and back to Eliza. The math, as simple as it was devastating, was finally adding up in his head. "Eliza," he said, his voice a pathetic croak. Sierra, however, was still in fight mode. "Oh, look," she scoffed, her voice dripping contempt. The scorned wife came to cry. "Did you come to beg for your allowance, darling? I'm afraid Dominic and I are liquidating." Eliza didn't even look at her. Her eyes were locked on Dominic. "You!" Dominic whispered, pointing a trembling finger. It was you. Your father. Probate." "My father," Eliza said, her voice clear and cold, ringing in the marble lobby, "was Lord Sterling Blackwood, founder and sole owner of Ether Holdings. And as his sole heir, I am Ether Holdings." The confession hung in the air, a live grenade with the pin pulled. Sierra's face crumpled. No, that's not possible." "I own this building," Eliza continued, stepping forward. Dominic stepped back. "I own the land it is built on. I own the chair in your office, the jet you flew last week, and the watch on your wrist. All of it. Ether property leased back to a CEO who was too arrogant to read his own contract." Dominic was hyperventilating. The prenup? The prenup!" Eliza almost smiled. "Oh, I am so glad you brought that up. Arthur, did you bring the prenup?" Arthur Graham stepped forward and held up the document. "It's quite clear, Mr. Stone. All assets revert to their verified original ownership. Since all of your assets were, in fact, my client's assets, You are left with exactly what you had when you met her. Dominic's mind flashed back 12 years, a failing startup, a $2,000 suit. You get nothing, Eliza said. It was not a threat. It was a fact. You are not entitled to the penthouse because I purchased it with ether funds. You are not entitled to the Marbella house, or the cars, or the art. You are not entitled, per the moral turpitude clause you violated last night, to even a severance package. She finally swung her gaze to Sierra. Sierra, who had been frozen in horror, visibly recoiled. "And you, Ms. Vance," Eliza said, her voice dropping to an arctic whisper. "You thought you were sleeping with the king. You were sleeping with a middle manager. A very, very well-paid middle manager, but an employee nonetheless." I will sue you," Sierra shrieked. "Wrongful termination, harassment." "Please do," Arthur Graham interjected, handing her a second envelope. "This is a copy of the SEC criminal complaint we are filing, detailing your conspiracy to use Mr. Stone's revoked authority to defraud the parent company. I believe the term is wire fraud. And this," he handed her a tablet, "is the security recording from Dominic's office, where you authorize the use of corporate funds for your Legacy Project media campaign. A campaign that was, in fact, a PR blitz for your personal relationship. I believe my fossil legal team will very much enjoy discovery." Sierra stared at the evidence, then at Eliza. She saw no mercy. She saw no anger. She saw nothing. Only the cold, black void of a problem being solved. Sierra dropped the tablet. She turned and bolted, her heels echoing on the marble, out of the building and out of their lives. Now it was just Dominic and Eliza. "Eliza," he pleaded, his voice breaking. He held out his hands. "Darling, please, I didn't know. It was a mistake, a test. It was a stupid, stupid mistake." "It was," Eliza nodded. "Your mistake was thinking I was an accessory. I was never the accessory, Dominic. I was the architect." She walked past him. You can't just leave me with nothing," he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. "After 10 years, I loved you. I worked for you." Eliza stopped, her back to him. She turned her head slightly. "No, Dominic, you didn't work for me. You worked for my company, and your performance has been deemed deficient. Security." The ether guards, who had been patiently waiting, stepped forward. One took each of Dominic's arms. "This is assault!" he yelled, as they began to physically drag him toward the revolving doors. "I am Dominic Stone. You can't do this to me. I'll tell the press. Eliza, please." Eliza watched as the man who had been the King of Charleston was unceremoniously dumped onto the sidewalk outside the building that used to bear his name. The stone Capitol sign overhead was already being prepared for removal. She turned to Arthur Graham. "Mr. Graham, have the sign removed before noon, and we will rebrand. I like my father's original name." "Sterling Innovations," Arthur said with a hint of a smile. "It has integrity." "Yes," Eliza said, walking toward the elevator. "It does. I will be in my office." The elevator doors chimed, and Eliza Sterling, ascended to her throne. The legacy. The day after the lobby confrontation was not just news. It was a seismic event. The city, which had feasted on the story of the scandalous kiss, was now served a far richer, more complex, and infinitely more satisfying meal. The Wall Street Journal, having hurriedly retracted their "The Siren" story, now screamed a headline that would become iconic. "The King is dead. Long live the Queen. How Silent Wife, Eliza Sterling, built and destroyed an empire." The story was everywhere. It wasn't just yellow journalism. It was a financial earthquake. The Financial Times ran a sober, astonished analysis titled, "The Ghost of Ether: How Stone Capital Was a $10 billion Decoy for 12 Years. Forbes, which had put Dominic's face on its cover just a month prior, launched a digital edition. Invisible Billionaire, Eliza Sterling, just gave a masterclass in corporate governance. The narrative, once a simple tale of a foolish wife and a cheating husband, was instantly rewritten. Eliza was not the scorned woman. She was the architect, the ghost, the ice queen. Feminist bloggers and financial gurus lauded her equally. Vogue ran an op-ed titled "The Power of the Pantsuit," analyzing her lobby entrance as a declaration of war and a new uniform for the woman who has had enough. In an instant, she was not only powerful, but a global symbol of quiet, terrifying competence. But while the world read about the new queen, the old court was in ruins. Dominic Stone hadn't slept. He wasn't in the penthouse. His key fob hadn't even worked in the elevator. He wasn't in a 5-star hotel. His Amex Centurion, his black card, his very identity, had been rejected with a discreet digital beep of finality. He was in a sterile, two-bed night Holiday Inn room downtown, a room he paid for with the last cash in his wallet. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, the cheap comforter scratching his skin, watching his own execution on CNN. He saw Eliza in that black pantsuit, walking into his lobby. He saw himself, a madman, being dragged away, his face a crimson mask, screaming his own name like a curse. "It's a lie," he muttered, the remote control in his hand. He clicked to Fox Business. A panel was dissecting the Event Horizon Clause. "It's a brilliant, brutal piece of legal work," one analyst said. "He violated the morality clause in front of the whole world. She didn't just divorce him, she fired him." "It's theft!" Dominic roared at the screen. "It's my company. I built it." He grabbed his phone, his contacts. They were all there. The most powerful men and women in New York and Atlanta. He would fight this. He would build an army. He called David Minguez, his personal lawyer, the shark who had drafted the prenup. "Dominic," David's voice was clipped, nervous. I can't talk." "What do you mean you can't talk?" Dominic shrieked. "She's stealing it. We sue her. We sue Ether. We tear her apart. You said the prenup was unbreakable." "It is, Dominic," Minguez said, his voice dropping. "It protects the verified original ownership. And Dominic, I've seen the incorporation documents. They were just sent over by Ether's counsel. You don't have any original ownership. You were a CEO, an employee on payroll. You founded Stone Capital as a 100% subsidiary of Ether Holdings. Dominic, she funded your startup. It was always hers." The phone felt slick in Dominic's hand. No, that's not." "And Dominic," Minguez said, the final nail, "I can no longer represent you. Your retainer agreement was with Stone Capital. Since you are no longer an agent of that company, and frankly, given Ether's counsel has sent a cease and desist to my entire firm, we are dropping you. Conflict of interest. Goodbye, Dominic." The line went dead. He tried others. His club friends, his rivals on the board. No one answered. Voice messages. User not found. He was a non-person. He was radioactive. A primal scream of rage and terror welled up in his chest. He threw the phone. It smashed against the wall in front of a generic framed print of a rowboat. He had one last card, one last desperate move. He used the hotel phone to call the one person who still profited from his misery, the columnist from the Wall Street Journal who had been at the gala. 2 hours later, they were in the hotel's dark, empty bar. The columnist, a man named Marcus, sipped a club soda, a small recorder on the table. "She's a monster," Dominic spat, his hands shaking. He hadn't shaved. "She's a black widow. She planned this for 12 years. She's inhuman. She let me build it just to take it away. She's the one who had the affair, you know, with Graham. I'm certain of it." Marcus just nodded, his eyes gleaming. "This is good, Dominic. This is gold. The betrayal of the Ice Queen. Keep talking. I am talking, Dominic said, leaning in. About my story, my book, my movie. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'm afraid you won't, Mr. Stone. A new, quiet, cold voice interrupted the bar. Dominic and Marcus spun around. A young man in a perfectly tailored, unwrinkled suit was standing there. He looked about 25, but his eyes were ancient. He worked for Arthur Graham. "Who the hell are you?" Dominic snapped. The young man did not answer. He simply placed a single folded document on the table in front of Dominic and tapped it. "What is this?" Dominic unfolded it. "That," the young counsel said, "is Appendix F, Section 3 of your CEO employment contract, the non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. It is comprehensive. It states, in short, that you cannot discuss Ether Holdings, Sterling Innovations, or any member of its board, which includes Eliza Sterling, in any public or private forum in perpetuity." "Or what?" Dominic scoffed, though his heart hammered. "Or," the counsel said, "you will be liable for liquidated damages in the sum of," and I quote, $1.5 billion. My firm has been instructed to monitor all media. If a single word of Mr. Stone's story appears in print, we will file suit, and we will win. We always do." The counsel looked at Marcus. "And you, sir, are now part of a potential tortious interference. I would advise you to delete that recording." Marcus, who had faced angry celebrities and mob lawyers, fumbled with his recorder and hit delete. He was terrified. "Good day, gentlemen." The young counsel turned and walked away. Dominic stared at this paper. It was a prison. He wasn't just ruined. He was silenced. He had no money, no company, no friends, and not even a story to sell. He was a ghost. He had been completely, utterly erased. The fall of the siren. Sierra Vance, on the other hand, was not the type to be erased. She was a fighter. She was a siren. And she was, in her own mind, the true victim. She spent 48 hours exhausting her remaining credit lines, assembling a dream team of lawyers. She was suing for wrongful termination, sexual harassment. Eliza created a hostile environment, and emotional distress. She was going to own Eliza Sterling. Her day in court, or rather, a sterile deposition room, came 3 weeks later. She walked in a dark, modest suit, her fiery hair pulled back. She was playing the role of the serious, aggrieved professional. Eliza was not there, of course. Only Arthur Graham, flanked by his sharp, young associate. "Ms. Vance," Arthur began, his voice a gravelly monotone. "Let's not waste time. You allege wrongful termination." "I was the highest performing executive at Stone Capital," Sierra said, her voice clear and rehearsed. "I was fired out of personal spite by a jealous, unbalanced woman. An unbalanced woman who, as sole shareholder, had every right to dissolve the board and clean house," Arthur countered. "But let's discuss your performance. Were you, or were you not, engaged in a sexual relationship with your direct superior, CEO Dominic Stone?" My personal life is irrelevant." "It is," Arthur said, sliding a file across the table. "When you use that personal life to defraud the company. This is a copy of the SEC complaint we filed yesterday. Let's go to Exhibit A1. He produced a printout. "This is your corporate Amex statement. On it, you purchased a custom red Carolina Herrera gown for $14,000. The description you filed with accounting was client entertainment and networking. Ms. Vance, whom were you entertaining?" Sierra's face paled. Dominic approved all my expenses. "Which brings us to Exhibit B," Arthur continued relentlessly. "A bank wire authorized by you for $2,000 from the Legacy Project marketing budget. This money was wired to Siren PR, a shell company incorporated in Delaware and owned by your sister. That was for a media blitz." "A media blitz?" Arthur said, sliding a copy of the Wall Street Journal with the kiss on it. which appears to have been heavily focused on your personal brand, not the company's. This, Ms. Vance, is either fraud. It is conspiracy. This is not a wrongful termination suit. This is a pre-trial hearing for a criminal case. Your criminal case. Sierra stared. The fight was gone. She was trapped. Now, Arthur said, leaning back. My client, Ms. Sterling, is generous. She finds this whole thing very distasteful. She is willing to drop the criminal charges and not sue you for the full amount of the assets you stole. I didn't steal. On the condition, Arthur continued, as if she hadn't spoken, that you drop this frivolous lawsuit, sign a full binding confession, and agree to the same non-disclosure agreement as Mr. Stone. Sierra's face crumpled. So I get nothing. Oh, quite the opposite, Arthur said. You get to stay out of a federal prison. Sierra Vance's ignominious end didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened a month later in a Starbucks in Charleston. Her lawsuits were gone. Her reputation shredded. The asset misappropriation lawsuit had bankrupted her. She was trying to buy a $6 latte. Declined, the barista said without looking up. What? No, try it again, Sierra snapped. It's a new card. The barista sighed, swiped it again. Declined. Again? Do you have cash? Do you know who I am? Sierra shrieked, the pressure of the last month exploding. I ran $1 billion company. This is ridiculous. Mom, I just need $650, she said in her native tongue. I am Sierra Vance. I will cost you your job. The video, titled Billionaire's Mistress Has Starbucks Meltdown, hit 10 million views before midnight. She wasn't just ruined. She was a meme. She was a joke. The coronation, while the old guard self-destructed, the new queen was building. Eliza Sterling's first act as chairwoman of the rebranded Sterling Innovations was not to celebrate, but to demolish. She stood in the huge, opulent boardroom, Dominic's throne room, with the architects of the Legacy Project. Madam Chairwoman, Ms. Sterling, the lead architect, a nervous man named Peter, began. Here are the revised blueprints for the spire. As Mr. Stone requested, it will be the tallest residential structure in the Western Hemisphere. A 20,000 square foot penthouse. Private. Stop, Eliza said. Her voice was quiet, but it silenced the room. Thank you, Mr. Peter, but you can throw this away. The architects looked at each other in horror. But Madam Chairwoman, this is 4 years of work. It was 4 years of work on the wrong project, Eliza said, walking to the giant model of the glittering phallic tower. This is a monument to one man's ego. I have no interest in ego. I am interested in a legacy. She turned to the stunned team. We are redesigning from the ground up. The spire is gone. We are not building a private club for billionaires. We are building a community. She pointed to the base of the model. This half. It becomes 1,000 units of state-of-the-art dignified housing for low to middle-income families. This private park. She moved a small gold-plated model tree. Is now a public park. And this space. It becomes a new, fully funded STEM school for the district. But Ms. Sterling, Peter stammered, the profit, the margins on this design are razor thin. Mr. Stone's design was obscene, Eliza offered. Do not worry about the margins, Mr. Peter. Worry about the skyline. My father believed the health of a company was tied to the health of the city it lived in. We are not just building apartments. We are investing in the city. Now, can your team handle that? Or should I find one that can? Peter, seeing the steel in her eyes, suddenly felt a rush of inspiration he hadn't felt in years. Yes, he said, standing straighter. Yes, Ms. Sterling, we can. Good, Eliza said. I want new blueprints on my desk in 1 week. When the story of the new legacy project broke, the city, already on her side, fell in love. She wasn't just a cold-blooded corporate raider. She was a visionary. She was, as one columnist put it, The billionaire we didn't know we needed. 3 months later, autumn in Charleston. The gigantic, flashy letters of Stone Capital had been scraped from the building. In their place, in elegant, brushed steel, were the words Sterling Innovations. Eliza stood in her office, the office that had, in fact, always been hers. The heavy dark mahogany and leather were gone, replaced by light woods, glass, and a breathtaking collection of modern art. The room was no longer a tomb of ego. It was a hub of light and air. Arthur Graham walked in, not bothering to knock. That was his custom. "Madam Chairwoman," he said. He still called her that, but there was a warmth to it now. "Arthur," she replied, turning from the window. "First quarter projections are in." He handed her a tablet. "It seems the market has a taste for integrity. We are up 30% over Stone Capital's best quarter. The new legacy project has secured 3 massive institutional partners. The city is ecstatic." "Good," Eliza said, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. "And one final administrative news item," Arthur said, a rare, sly look in his eyes. "You'll recall we are taking bids for catering services for the first annual Sterling Foundation Gala. We have received several offers, and a call came in this morning. A very persistent sales representative from a new supplier, Monarch Catering Supplies based out of Savannah." Eliza's smile did not waver, but her eyes were momentarily ice. "Go on." "The representative," Arthur continued, "was a Mr. Dominic Stone. He was very insistent about speaking directly to you to make the sale personally. He said he had a long-standing relationship with the principal." Eliza was silent for a moment, looking out at the city she now so visibly helped to lead. She thought of the man screaming in her dressing room. She thought of the man who had kissed his mistress for the world to see. And now she thought of the man on the phone, in a cheap suit, trying to sell her cocktail napkins. "And what did you tell him, Arthur?" she asked, her voice soft. "I informed Mr. Stone that all vendor communication must go through the acquisitions department," Arthur said, his voice flat. "I also cautioned him that, given his familiarity with the company principal, any further direct contact might be viewed as a conflict of interest, or perhaps harassment." "And the bid?" Eliza asked. "Competitive per unit," Arthur said, with the slightest shrug. "But I'm informed the quality of his napkins is, to put it mildly, deficient. We will, of course, be declining." Eliza finally laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh, but it was real and warm and filled the entire office. "Thank you, Arthur. That will be all. Madam Chairwoman." He left her alone. Eliza Sterling turned back to the window. The weight of the diamonds was gone. The weight of the dresses was gone. The weight of the name Stone was a bitter, distant memory. All that remained was the crown. It was heavy. It was hers. And she, for the first time in her life, realized she was born to wear it. The meaningful ending. And so the empire built on arrogance was toppled by the woman who laid the first stone. Eliza Stone, now Eliza Sterling, didn't just get revenge. She got justice. She reminded the world that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. Dominic and Sierra thought they were taking over the company, but they were only employees, and they had just been given the ultimate pink slip. Tell me in the comments, what did you think of Eliza's final power move? Do you think Dominic's downfall was satisfying, or did he deserve even more? If you loved this story of drama, karma, and sweet, sweet revenge, make sure to hit that like button on this video. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Share this video with a friend who needs to see that the best revenge is owning everything.